So I sat down at the computer and I wrote what poured out of me. And it just so happened that at the time he gave me this instruction, I had within the last 3 months come out as gay to my pastor at my church, to my parents, and I had also written an email to a guy named Dr. Wesley Hill, who was a celibate gay Christian author who I greatly admired. And he had just written me back. And so I was in the throes of all of those conversations. So when I sat down in front of the blank page and wrote whatever poured out of me, what poured out of me was my own musings about what it looked like to want to be a follower of Jesus in the context of having a particular experience of sexuality, in the context of 21st century America, where both of those things are rather contested. And so my agent's advice to just write something down turned into a journal entry, which became a long journal entry, which became a lot of long journal entries paired back to back. And at some point I sat back and I was like, oh my, it seems I have written a book. Which is not the recommended way to get into Christian publishing, but it's what happened in my case.
Wow. Yeah, and because you think about like when constructing a book, like you are pitching your idea, you're like constructing like how you're going to organize the book. And in your case, it was just raw emotion. You're processing how you're feeling throughout this really important time in your life. And it's almost like therapy, like coming to that blank page and just like, here it is. Here's everything, raw feelings. And to me, that's like the most amazing, like your writing is so emotional and so engaging. And I feel like every one of your essays, they stand on their own. Like it's important to read everything to see the full journey and to see your thought process, but each essay truly stands on its own. And to me, whenever I read, like when I was reading your essays, just the way you even end your essays, like I wanted more. Like you leave me wanting so much more. And so that's always to me a sign of a really great writer is when I finish an essay and I'm like, that's not fair. You can't end it there. And then I'm like, okay, I got to get to the next essay now. So the way that you write, I'm so happy that you decided to take the raw emotion, take all this very personal. I mean, you have tremendous courage as well to take this vulnerable writing that could have been just conversations with a therapist that stayed there. And you know what I mean? Like those are the kinds of conversations I'll have with my therapist. Like this stays in this room between me and you. I have that trust and you're not going to judge me. It's another thing to like take that, like that emotion, that pain, and then put it onto a page. And then for you to be able to write it in such a poetic and beautiful way that resonates with so many of us. So thank you for doing that. And as I was reading your latest book, No Longer Strangers, you talk about in one of your essays about that period where you had finished your book, your first book, and you realize, okay, I haven't told very many people at my church about being gay, and this will be a surprise to them. I should probably let them know. But it's like, should I let them know or should I just let them discover? Like, it's not really their business, but I'm writing a book. And so you're talking about that whole difficult situation is in your mind, like wrestling. Well, this is no one, should I let them know? And then you talk about that Facebook post. And I got to tell you, as you were like describing that moment, I was getting anxious, like reading. I want to encourage everyone to read that chapter because I was getting very emotional and anxious for you as I'm reading you talking about that Facebook post, and you're like building it up, and I'm like, and then you actually share the Facebook post in the book, and I'm reading this going, how much thought and empathy and compassion you had as you were trying to explain your feelings, and also not to separate or hurt anybody else in the way that you were coming out, like the way that you did it was so compassionate, so beautiful. And then also like, let's create a safe space. Like, let's be very careful, Christian, in the comment, or anybody who's reading this, like be very careful. So can you talk about like that part? Because you have this book coming out and now you are wrestling with who do I tell and how do I tell it?
Yeah. What I did after I signed the contract to publish this first book, which was called Single Gay Christian, after I signed the contract for Single Gay Christian, I had approximately, I want to say it was 14 or 15 months from contract signing to publication day, which meant that I had maybe 6 or 7 months before the pre-order link for the book went live, and so I could sort of share that publicly with everybody. And so the first thing I did after I signed the contract, I sat down and I made a list of slightly over 100 people in my life who I
Wow.
felt like these are people that I am close enough with that I feel like it would be good for me to have some kind of personal interaction with them before I say, hey, look, here's a book with half of my face on the cover and the words single and gay and Christian, which collectively leave very little to the imagination. So I sat down and made a list and figured out like, okay, who do I want to connect with before that happens? And so because I had lived my life kind of all over the place, some of those were phone conversations, some of them were emails that I sent, and then some of them were conversations that I sat down in person and talked to people. And it was kind of like playing relational roulette every time. The majority of those conversations went really well. I was blessed to have a lot of really great people in my life, but not all of them went well. And the fact that they didn't all go well made it all the more terrifying. And so after working through that list of people, then I thought through, okay, how am I going to sort of make some kind of public declaration about this? Because obviously the book will be a public affair, so I should say something. And I wanted to navigate. I appreciate so much what you said about existing in the tension between wanting to show love to a lot of different groups of people, because what I wanted so much to try to do was to continue to express love and respect for folks in the Christian communities that I had been part of and continued to be part of, even though some of those folks I knew would be uncomfortable hearing about my experience of sexual attraction, even if they and I happen to agree on certain questions about sexual ethics, about what we're called to do as we steward our bodies as followers of Jesus. And then on the other side of the conversation, I wanted to show respect to people who didn't follow Jesus or who had a different set of convictions about what Jesus had to say about sexual ethics. And I wanted to not unnecessarily distance myself from other people who identify as gay, even if we don't share the same sexual ethics. And so I was thinking to myself, it's less hard for me to have a single conversation just with somebody who shares with me a Christian identity and has some issues with the fact that I'm gay. Or it's a little easier for me to just have a conversation with somebody who's gay, doesn't share my sexual ethics, but to try to have a conversation with everyone simultaneously, to try to say to everyone simultaneously, to speak in a vocabulary that everybody understands, which I think, going back to what we were saying earlier about some of my academic work, this problem of how do we use language that works for the kinds of things we want it to do in the world, as we recognize that who is speaking and to whom they are speaking always fundamentally changes the way that language is received and what it has the power to do. So it was definitely tricky and terrifying trying to figure out, like, what does it look like to faithfully walk a line that actually opens up space to talk well about who Jesus is and about what is true of the world with people all across those spectra of belief and experience. So yeah, the Facebook post itself, I labored over that thing. I prayed and cried over that thing. And I remember when the evening came that I finally decided to put it up, I copied and pasted it out of an email draft where I'd been saving it forever. I put it into Facebook. I just hit post, and then I slammed the lid of my laptop down, and I just shoved it away. I sat back against my chair, and I breathed really, really fast, as if I was climbing the climb hill of a roller coaster. And I think it took less than a minute before my phone started buzzing. And I don't think my phone stopped buzzing for like the next, I don't know how many hours.
The way you describe it in your book, that essay is beautiful. Like the way that you describe it and all the raw emotion. Like I said, it was so tense. So I was reading your words, and I was feeling anxious getting panicky. And then when I shared and then when you wrote the post, I was like envisioning all the thought and empathy and compassion you had in developing it and like re-editing it and making it sound. You're like trying to read it as a Christian who maybe doesn't understand someone who's gay. You're trying to understand, you're reading it as somebody who's gay, who maybe doesn't share your sexual ethic, right? You're trying to like, you're wrestling with that. I thought you did a beautiful job composing that. And then in your book and what you just said, when you like click submit and you just shut the laptop, I was like, what? I was like reading, I was like, you what? Like, I would be like staring at the screen, just like scared, gonna like this. And you were like done. You're like, I'm done. Like it was like almost like a moment of like, I'm done. Like you close the laptop, it is out there, let it be. And so that was my reaction when I read like you just shut the laptop, because I was like, I wouldn't be shutting the laptop. I'd be like staring at the screen.
I think in retrospect, I'm surprised that I did that by myself. It sort of makes sense in the sense that I feel like a lot of significant moments in that journey I did by myself, just because I was like, I don't even know what I feel. And if somebody else is here, I'm going to feel the pressure to tell them what I feel, but I haven't figured it out yet. So I would have nothing to say. But it certainly, there was a lot going on in my heart and mind at that moment to sort through.
Hey, thank you so much for checking out this video clip from the Delgado podcast. To get more videos like this, simply subscribe here on YouTube. You can also download the full episode of each show on iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, or your favorite podcast player. Take care.